Welcome back! We're almost at the section where we'll finally be able to start getting our hands dirty with some real data. However, before we jump headfirst into the data pool, let's discuss the types of places where data can reside and the implications behind these types of locations. As I briefly mentioned in the previous video, there is a tool called Power Query in Power BI and in Excel that can connect to almost any data source. If your data exists somewhere and you can access it, there's a good chance Power Query has a way to connect to it. Now, each of these icons is a type of connection that is possible using Power Query. Some of you might be thinking, wow, that's a lot of connections. Well, let me tell you, these are only a fraction of the data connections currently available. As of last count, Power Query has over 80 distinct data connectors, and that list is growing all the time. Everything from local databases, flat files, cloud storage, Azure, Google, Amazon, Hadoop, and more can all be connected to. The list goes on and on. The best part too is that you don't have to connect to just one data source. Because we'll be building our own data model in Power BI, we can import data from any combination of these data sources. The sky is truly the limit. Now, this many data sources can seem overwhelming or confusing to first-time users, so let me bucket them into two primary groups to help us simplify things a bit. There are two really important groups that data sources fall into. Those groups are either data that exists on premises or data that exists online. The reason these two distinctions are so important is that they determine what will be required to both connect to and refresh your data once it's been loaded into a Power BI report. Now, on-premises data means that the data is sitting on a local machine somewhere for the client or company and is not in the cloud. Local data mostly consists of two primary data sources. The first, and arguably the most common, is a local server. This can be in the form of a SQL database, SSAS Cube, or SSAS Tabular Model, with SSAS meaning SQL Server Analysis Services. On-premises data can also be found in local files such as Excel, CSV, or text files. These files can be connected to individually or as an entire folder of files. In fact, that's one of the amazing features we'll be learning in a later video, which is how to combine data from a folder automatically with Power Query. If your data is local in any form, there's also a small but necessary extra step involved in setting up report refreshes, and that is installing a Power BI Data Gateway. This is the tool included in the Power BI subscription and is simply a bit of software that lets Power BI reports retrieve data from the database or file location that is on a local server or machine somewhere. We'll also discuss that when the time comes as well in a later video. Now, if your data is not local, then that means it resides in some type of cloud service. This means that, typically, it's much easier and simpler to connect to, and refresh as well, once the report is in the Power BI service. Since all of the data is already online, no additional gateways or setup would be required. Once you've built the report and published it to PowerBI.com, it's just a matter of turning on a scheduled refresh and picking the times you'd like it to refresh. Now, just because you currently have local data doesn't mean it has to stay that way. There is actually a cloud-based solution for any type of local data you have. For example, instead of having a local SQL or SSAS server as the container for your data, you could put that same dataset in something like Azure. In fact, there's many online solutions for hosting databases from companies such as Microsoft, Amazon, Google, and so on. Plus, with online hosting, you don't have to worry about maintenance or upgrades. So there are many benefits even outside of just the reduced complexity of report refreshes. Now, even for data sources such as flat files or file folders, there's still an elegant solution that is easier than hosting them locally. The easiest solution within the Microsoft stack would be to host those files on a SharePoint site. In fact, Power BI Premium includes a SharePoint site that's automatically created whenever you create a new workspace on PowerBI.com. So once you've set up workspaces on the Power BI service for your company, you can host any flat files you need for reporting right in that SharePoint folder, eliminating the need to bother with local file paths and data gateways. Now, it's fair to point out there are good reasons to have local data for some companies. Security and cost are often the two most commonly mentioned reasons, Both have advantages and disadvantages, but overall Power BI works a bit easier with online data sources. Alright, that about covers it for data sources in Power BI. In the next video, we'll be importing our first set of data into a new Power BI desktop file, and learning about the fundamentals of how Power Query's interface and functionality works.